Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome back once again to the ROS Media channel. I'm back here again with my good friend Ian Clifford. Morning, Ian. Good to have you with us.
Morning, everyone.
I want to start by asking you all a question. If you bought a board game and you looked at the rules on how to win the game, and it said a winner is someone who wins, you'd probably think the manual was a bit broken. So why do I ask that question? Well, today we're going to uncover that you are in fact playing a very high stakes game of Monopoly. We often refer to the Monopoly board of commerce, but within that rule book, it's missing the most important page. You know, today it's time to stop acting as surety for a bankrupt system and start playing as the true creditor. So we're going to discuss the subject of no money of substance, no definition of income or gain, therefore no tax. There's thousands of pages in the tax code, in their rules of the game, and yet they never actually define the most important word, which is income. So, I mean, just to kind of kick this off, Ian, I mean, how can they tax something that they can't even define? You know, is it a law if this definition is in this sort of constant moving loop?
Well, I mean, what they do is they use common practice. So they say it's common practice for the citizens to pay taxes. And because it becomes common practice, if you go to court against the tax officers, their only defense will be it's common practice. It's generally accepted to be like this. So therefore, you know, that's what they will use. Now, you know, you could really get deep into this, right? So you could say that it was common practice for people to believe that they could fly to the sun. Yeah, it was common practice to believe that, right? That you could get in your, this is going back all the way back in history, in mythology, right? That you could fly to the sun, and if you got too close to it, you'd burn, right? Now, obviously, if you had a spacecraft and you could fly to the sun, you probably would burn. But how far away is the sun? It's a long way away, right? It would take a long time to get there. Probably many lifetimes to get there. So it's a bit of a mythology thing, right? But imagine if you were in a courtroom and somebody who is an environmentalist was arguing that it's common practice to believe that you can fly to the sun, and that's their defense. Well, that's a little bit like a tax office saying it's common practice for everyone to pay taxes, so therefore that is our position. You know, that's their strength of their argument. It's common practice. Now, in the legal system, there is lots of cases that are precedent. There's precedents are set based on common practice. So it's a little bit like if they don't actually have a legal definition, the only thing they can fall back on is its common practice. Okay. I say that's good enough.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, in terms of the shift in all of this, one of the big events was the great money flip of 1933, wasn't it? This sort of shift from real money to IOUs. I mean, when the gold vanished in 1933 and the government took, you know, the real money out of our hands, you know, if we don't have money of substance anymore, what exactly are we passing around in our wallets then?
Well, I think one of the biggest realizations is that when you really get a comprehension of the Monopoly Board of Commerce, and it does take a while to figure this out and for it to percolate in, because we've all had a lifetime of programming thinking that if you looked in your bank account and you saw a credit balance, i.e. a positive balance, not an overdraft, a positive balance, that balance is actually a positive value. And you could, you know, you would be very well forgiven for believing that value is positive. When people say, you know, I own a house and it's worth £1 million, dollars, euros, 10 million, whatever the value, whatever they believe the value is, they would be, I'm sure, very, very confident that that value is a positive value.
Yeah.
They would
Makes
say,
sense.
my house is worth whatever it's worth, and that is a positive balance. They would probably say that every time they got paid wages or made a profit in their business, that their wages or their profits were positive balances. And I'm pretty sure if you did a poll and you went out randomly up and down the high street and asked 100 people, could you tell me, do you get any wages? Oh yeah, okay. Or do you have a business? Yeah, okay. And do you make a profit? Yeah. Are those wages or profits positive? Are they positive values to you? I'm pretty sure that you'd probably get 100 out of 100 people saying, yeah, I earn wages, that's positive balance. I make a profit in my business, that's a positive balance. If you then ask the same people, okay, another question, do you own anything? Have you got any value? Do you own anything? A car, a house? Do you have anything like that? And 100 people said, yeah, I own a house, I own a car. Do you think the value of that house or car is a positive balance? And I think you'll get 100 out of 100 saying, well, of course it is. It's it's got to be positive because I can sell it and get a positive balance in exchange for it. Yeah. Somebody buys it from me and I get a positive balance. So it's got to be a positive, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. So you see, we've all been tricked to believe that everything on the Monopoly board is a positive, when in reality, everything on the Monopoly board is a negative. It is a debt, because the whole system on the Monopoly board is based on debt. And debt is negative, not positive. Debt is negative. So when you get a bill from the gas company, the electric company, the telephone company, the whatever company, and it says you owe whatever, 1,000, 100, 10,000, whatever the bill is, that bill is actually a debt. It's a negative value that they're sending you. And the only way that you can get rid of it, extinguish it, is to issue another debt, which is a promise to pay in the future. And it discharges the first debt. But now you've got one debt that's being discharged by another debt. And you see, in 1933, because they wanted to transition into a system where there was no substance of money, the only substance that there is energy. So the energy of the living men and women, it's been transferred from the living man or woman onto the Monopoly board, which is artificial, through the birth certificate construct, which is the person, the citizen, this entity that's been created following the registration of the birth certificate. That entity is the banker. If you look at the Bills of Exchange Act 1882, it confirms it in there that it's a body of persons is a banker. Well, a citizen is a person. So therefore, that person is the banker that is issuing these securities, which are in fact debt. They are converted to debt by the banks. So everything that's going on is debt based. The whole Monopoly board is in bankruptcy following House Joint Resolution 192 in 1933. Let's just call it the worldwide state or the cabal have taken a mortgage out over the energy of the people.
Right.
Everything on the Monopoly board is artificial. You can't own a house, a car, nothing. You can't own anything because everything is being mortgaged to the state, the world state. So the illusion of ownership is also part of this, right? You can't own anything. You can't own the legal title of anything. House, car, business, cryptocurrency, stock shares, bonds, all of those things that people think they own, they actually don't own them. Not the legal title, they only have the equitable title.
So we're kind of renting that then, aren't we, from the state, I guess?
So if you like, if you imagine that the Monopoly board is it's an artificial game board where everything on it is also artificial, and because you can't own it, because it's all been mortgaged to the state, to the cabal, the world state cabal, what you've actually got is the use of all these things on the Monopoly board, which is what they call equitable title to those things. You can use them, but you can never own them.
You don't own them. Okay.
You don't own them. The use of them, when you use them from the Monopoly board, that's how they justify taxes, because you're basically renting what has already been transferred to the world state, the cabal. They've got the legal title. Everything is bankrupt on the Monopoly Board of Commerce. When you use something, you've got to pay for the use of it. Yeah, that's taxes. So you see, they can't define income because there is no income, and because there's no money of substance, and because everything on the Monopoly board is bankrupt. And how could there possibly be an income? How could there be a gain if everything is negative to start with, and if nothing is owned by the citizens? If everything is financed through the energy of the living man, woman onto the Monopoly board, if everything on the Monopoly board is artificial, if everything on the Monopoly board is based on a negative value, how could there ever be a gain or an income?
Yeah.
Couldn't be.
No,
that's why
that makes sense.
Yeah, that's why they don't define it.
So I've got this clear in my head, and obviously for the listeners, what we're saying here is everything's inverted, basically. It's all debt-based. Most people think that they can, quote unquote, pay their bills, but they can't. If money's just a debt instrument, an IOU, then we're just swapping one debt for another, and you can only discharge. You can't pay for things, and we don't own anything. We don't have absolute title to our things. We're just effectively renting that from the state. Now, you mentioned this playing piece, this Monopoly board, and you mentioned the birth certificate construct. Let's talk about that, because I think this is certainly an important part of the whole process. Took me a long while to get my head around this. It really did. But this playing piece, this avatar, call it what you will, the real living man or woman versus the name. Could you explain, this birth certificate? When the birth certificate's registered, the state creates a legal person, looks like you, isn't you. Is that name on the certificate, is that a biological record, or is it more like a corporate vessel, this avatar or this playing piece for a game? What exactly is it?
Well, it's a corporate construct, and again, it's a construct. It's not real. There's no substance to it. It's just a record. So your mum and your dad, they sign all these documents. They create a record. They register the birth certificate itself. That creates a decedent estate, and that estate is then there's an automatic linkage between the living man, woman, which of course at that time is a baby, and the birth certificate construct. So there is an agency linkage. This is so significant.
Yeah.
Nearly everybody who's studied this subject, it appears to me, has missed one vital, most significant trap, which is that there is an agency relationship between the living being, the living sentient being. A baby becomes an adult. That agency is not only the problem that nearly everybody's experiencing, it's the cause of the problem, but it's also the solution as well. Because if there was no agency between the living sentient man or woman and the birth certificate construct, the reason why it's a problem and a trap is because all debt, all liability is underwritten by the living man, woman. The linkage between the two, right? So the artificial playing board with all of these artificial citizens, the person, the birth certificate constructs are all on the board, but they're all being underwritten as sureties for the liability transfers from the monopoly board back to the living man woman, because they are the agent, and the agent is responsible for the principal, has equal liability to the principal. So you see, they've set everybody up in this trap right from the birth certificate registration. That's the trap. And then to make it worse, nearly everybody, including me, when you come of age, 18, 21, you go around holding yourself out. That's a term in the law. Holding out means representing that you are that birth certificate construct. Holding out to be it. Of course, if you hold out to be the birth certificate, how can you be an artificial construct? You can't. No. So you say you are this artificial construct. Everybody does it, including me, because I didn't know any better. Yeah, that's fraud, right? That's an identity fraud. Now, every time that you want to make a payment, so make a bank transaction, enter into a debt, a credit card, loan, or a mortgage, what you're doing is being the agent for the birth certificate construct, which is a banker that's going to issue a negotiable instrument, and it couldn't have issued that instrument, all those thousands of instruments which we've all issued onto this artificial game board, unless there was an agency between the living man, woman, and the birth certificate construct. So there is both a curse and a trap, because if you get a speeding fine, if they want to throw you in jail, if you are owed taxes, or the citizen person owes taxes, that trap is the agency. But at the same time, you can recoup that signature credit energy, which we talk about a lot at Republic of Old Souls, because of the agency. So it is a curse and a blessing, all wrapped up in the same package, right? It's both the problem and the solution.
And the solution.
In the same package.
Well, I want to come on to that. I definitely want to come on to the signature side of things. That is super important. So again, kind of what I'm hearing here is that this avatar has no life, no talent, no energy. And it only works because we as the living humans provide the energy and the signature to move it around the board, essentially. But there's that agency trap that we're linked to it. Even though we are separate, we are linked to it. And as you said, that then creates liability for everything that it does on the monopoly board. But also there's a silver lining to this. So let's talk about the silver lining. I call it the magic pen. You know, when it comes to borrowing money, you know, most people think that the banks lend them money. Yeah, they're going to the bank, they want to take out a car loan or a mortgage or whatever it is. They're borrowing that money from the bank and they sign the piece of paper. But what you're saying is that what's actually happening is the moment your pen hits that paper on a loan or a mortgage, something else happens at that point. What exactly is that?
Well, it's basically the intention to transfer energy onto the monopoly board. So the signature is it's like a gateway. You open the gate when you sign, and it transfers the energy from substance, which is the living man, woman, on to the monopoly board through the person, which is the banker. So the person is like the gateway, the banker that can issue negotiable instruments, deposits. So I often say this on the webinars. If you were at a dinner party with a group of bankers and you ask them all, how does your bank lend money? And they would probably all say, we take deposits from our customers and we lend them out.
Yeah. And
nobody at the dinner party is going to say, well, that's a bit crazy. Why would you do it like that? Because it makes perfect sense, yeah? Because, now, think about it. I want everyone who's watching this to think about that.
Yeah.
You're going to make, so the bankers say their customers make deposits. So you would presume in your mind that is positive values. You're going to transfer something of positive value to the bank as a deposit, yeah? And they're going to take it in as a positive value. It's got to be positive, right? So you think, because it's part of your wages or your profits, or you made some profit selling something. and now you're going to deposit it in the bank as a positive value. Yes, so you think, but what you're actually doing is you are issuing a security which is of a negative value once it's converted by the bank. So this is what they call ex nihilo credit creation. The signature transfers it's an asset that gets converted to a debt.
Okay.
The bank takes the asset, that's the signature, that then is converted by the clearing bank, because that all the banks that we all interact with are clearing banks. They convert it into a negative value. So they hold the asset on one side of the balance sheet, which is the signature.
Yeah.
You can't use, by the way. You can't spend that signature.
No.
And I'm going to go a little bit further than that in a minute, because it's really important, because a lot of people think that you can issue negotiable instruments as if they were tender for currency.
Right.
A lot of people make a massive mistake by doing this.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So you make the deposit by tendering to the bank that takes that tendered instrument. They have a license to treat it as an asset and then match it on the other side of their balance sheet. There's two sides to a balance sheet with a negative value. So that's how the energy, it starts positive, it converts to negative. And it only convert to negative through a clearing bank or through the treasury and the central banks, because they do the same thing. That's how they do quantitative easing. It starts as positive, it gets matched with a negative, equal value negative, and then it moves into the Monopoly Board of Commerce. It becomes world debt, negative, all negative. So you see, the energy is positive, but you can't spend the energy. You can't use the positive energy. You can only convert it to negative through a clearing bank or through a central bank. And that is how the energy gets on the board, by conversion.
Okay.
The banks convert it from positive to negative. Let me give you another example. If I came to you and said, here's a piece of paper, and it's a negotiable instrument, it's for $1 million.
Okay.
Pay to the order of Andy Benson, $1 million.
Right.
Could you take that and put it into your bank account?
Depends what it was written on. If it was written on a checkbook, possibly. But if it was written on a napkin, just in some handwriting, then I can't do anything with that, can I?
Now you see a lot of people in the freedom and truth community, they issue negotiable instruments on bits of paper, pay to the order of the value and whoever they're trying to pay, and they send it like it's going to be used to pay off their mortgage, or it's going to be used to pay off their tax bill, or it's going to be used to pay down their utility bill. And then they get bent out of shape. And I've listened to people on YouTube talking about this.
Yeah.
That they sent the negotiable instrument to discharge their tax bill, their utility bill, their mortgage, and the bank or the utility company refused to take it. And they get all bent out of shape on it, because it's like, well, you know, it's legal tender, a negotiable instrument. I sent it to the bank or the utilities company and they refused to take it. That's because it's not being converted. Right. Okay. It's never converted. Okay. So you see, and the only way you can convert it is through a clearing bank. It's got to go through that clearing bank process. They take it as a positive. You can't use it because it hasn't been converted to a negative. Then it's transferred. It's now on the Monopoly board. It's like a gateway, positive to negative. It's a gateway. It's a gateway onto the Monopoly board. The banks, the banker, which is the person, and the bank that is taking that positive value in. That's all part of the process of conversion. Okay. Ex nihilo credit. So this is why you can't send negotiable instruments. because they're not legal tender, even though people believe that they are. They're not, because they've not been converted.
Okay. So what you're saying here is that the bank monetizes our signature, and that essentially we're the ones that create the credit. The bank's just kind of the middleman holding the bag. And they're the ones that have the license to convert it, which now becomes a negotiable instrument on the monopoly board. And that process of conversion, we don't have the ability to do that. No. So I just can't grab a piece of paper right here and write, $1 million on there, and then take that down to the bank and say, can I cash this in, please? Doesn't work like that.
Doesn't work like that, because you see the clearing banks have been given an accounting exemption to take in deposits, negotiable instruments, and convert them into ex nihilo credit, which is a negative. That they've been given that exemption. No other entity has that exemption, which is why the bankers are always part of the elites. When people talk about banking families, because they've been given this exemption to convert the positive energy into negative, into debt, put it on the monopoly board. They're never going to go bust, are they?
No. What if they can create it out of thin air? They're not. No.
Because all they've got to do is get some people to create positive deposits, which is the deposit of the negotiable instrument, the energy. They can convert it into debt on the other side of their balance sheet, and then get this, they can sell that for a massive profit. So they start with zero and they end up with a huge profit by selling that debt instrument to their friends in Wall Street, who then trade it and make even more money off the back of it.
But surely there has to be a reason. There has to be a reason for them to create it. And I'm just sort of thinking sideways here, I mean, before I learned all of this, none of this made any sense to me. But now when I look around, just even in our local area, for example, there are a lot of things that make more sense, in that there are constantly right now new housing estates going up, new home builds everywhere. We live in a beautiful rural area, but all the countryside is being massacred with all of these new house builds. And I'm sitting there thinking, I know exactly why they're building all those houses, because if there's houses, people need mortgages.
Yeah.
And if there's mortgages, they got to go to the bank for that. And that gives them a reason to convert that signature energy into this ex nihilo credit. Would I be wrong in thinking that, or am I right in thinking that?
If you take the whole monopoly board itself, I mean, take the world monopoly board and then value every single asset, which is actually a negative on the board. You end up with trillions, many trillions. And very few people, I think, actually think about, well, where did all that money come from to finance all of these houses, factories, skyscrapers, aircraft, ships, infrastructure, roads, buildings of all manner and shapes and sizes? Where did all that money come from to finance all of that? It's an interesting thing to think about. When you realize that it's all created through signature credit in one way or another. It's either directly through the clearing banks, or it's through the governments the Treasury working with the central banks and creating ex nihilo credit, which is, they call it, and this was Professor Richard Werner's terminology, quantitative easing. It's basically ex nihilo credit creation done on a grand scale between the Treasury and the central banks. Most of the money on the monopoly board, 97% of it, is banks taking negotiable instruments, deposits from the signature. 97% of it is signature credit directly from the signatures.
Wow, that's huge. So this magic pen that everyone's holding, their signature, you probably can't even see that because of my background, but whatever you want to call it, I just sort of referenced it, the magic pen. You said that this sort of law of agency is a curse, but also a blessing. So I want to talk a little bit about the Clifford Protocol as well, because, you know, we've spoken about this many, many times. If I'm the one, through my intention of signing something and creating that energy, creating that signature credit, you're saying that there is a blessing behind that. There is a silver lining to that as well, in that you can reclaim that energy. So when the banks use your credit to, or they use your signature to create the credit, what you're saying is that they often abandon that credit. So is the Clifford Protocol just a way to, is it a way to kind of file a correction so that credit is then linked back to you? How does that work?
Well, it's actually the creditor abandons the credit. So the living man, woman, the provider of the signature has transferred this deposit through the birth certificate contract, through the bank, the clearing bank, who's then created the debt, who's then sold the debt into the securitization market, which is a huge, massive marketplace where the investment banks are buying and selling the securities, which are all based on debt, and hypothecating them so they can multiply them out even more through hypothecation. So all of those banks that are trading on Wall Street, really, as I've said many times, they're trading human energy. They're trading energy. Everything on the monopoly board is based on human energy. It's based on the sentient being's transference of energy onto the board. The energy starts positive and ends negative. It converts to negative on the board. So everything on that board is negative. That's why everything is bankrupt. That's why there's no income, there's no gain, because you can't make a gain from a negative.
No.
How can you make something positive if everything on that board is negative to start with, right? So when you're looking at the Clifford Protocol, it is the recoupment of taxes where those on the board, all of the nominees, because all of the banks are operating as nominees. Nominees is another word for fiduciary, trustee, or the actual creditors. The actual creditors are the living men and women who've transferred their energy. If you like, they've transferred their energy onto the monopoly board through a nominee or a number of nominees, banks, nominees, fiduciaries, trustees, and the actual energy still belongs back to the living man or woman. So the nominees are operating like a trust. So for example, to make it simple, if I had a value of $1 million in gold, a piece of gold worth $1 million, right? Physical gold.
Yeah.
And I came to you and said, Andy, I trust you. Would you look after this gold for me? I'm going to give it to you. You're going to hold on to it for me until I want it back.
All right.
And you say, yeah, okay, Ian, it's a bit of a high value, but I'll do that for you. I've got a safe. I'll put it in there, right? So I give it to you in trust, because you are now my trustee. I've given you $1 million of gold. Now, who does that $1 million of gold belong to? Does it belong to you? Does it belong to me?
Belongs to me. Yeah.
Now, if you liken that to what's going on with signature credit, every bank payment, every mortgage, every loan, every credit card, every signature that creates that deposit, it's like me giving you my gold and saying, and you become a nominee, a trustee, a fiduciary, right? So if you liken those and put them in parallel, everybody is like giving their gold, which is their energy, to the banks as nominees, as trustees. They use it, they multiply it through hypothecation, but they have to pay taxes for using it.
Right.
Right. Now, I'll give you another example. Go all the way back into monetary history. And when the banks first started off, hundreds of years ago, you would go there if you were very wealthy and you'd say to the bank, here's my gold. Will you put it in your safe? Because they had a safe, right? They had a building, they had a safe. And, you thought you could trust them. They weren't going to run away with your gold, right? So you would put your gold in their vault, right?
Yeah.
And they would give you back a bit of paper, which is your claim against the gold.
Yeah.
Now, that piece of paper is basically a security. Yeah.
Okay.
So
that makes sense.
The bank is holding the physical gold. This is going back hundreds of years ago. You get a bit of paper that says that you can take that back to the bank and you can give it to them and say, I want my gold.
Yeah.
So this is how banking first began, right? Now, what the banks realized was, oh, that's interesting. Maybe we could give out more than one bit of paper. So we've got $1 million worth of gold in our vault that belongs to Ian. So your vault, the vault, Andy's vault, it's got $1 million of gold in it.
Yeah.
What would happen if we gave the same bit of paper to some other guy who wants it, and some other guy, and some other guy, and some other guy? This is how the currency trade, this is how securities started off, right? The physical gold never changed. It was $1 million worth of gold. But the bank started issuing out these notes and bits of paper multiple times on the same piece of gold, same value of gold. Right? Now, what they've done in 1933 is they've removed the gold and replaced it with the energy of the people. But they're still handing out all these bits of paper, all based on the energy. They've just replaced gold with energy. That's all they've done. Now, what they do, if you go all the way back to the early version of banking, if I came to the Bank of Andy and said, here's my $1 million of gold, a piece of gold, you're holding it in your safe, right? And then you wanted to use it in the way that I've just described. Do you think you have to pay me something for using my gold?
Well, interest, I would imagine, on your account.
Yeah, exactly. You'd pay me interest because you're holding my gold and you're using it. You'd come to me and say, hey, I want to use your gold. I'm not going to give it away, but I'm just going to issue some other bits of paper off the back of it. But the good news is I'll pay you some interest for using it.
For the privilege, yeah. Okay.
And I'll say, well, as long as you're not giving it away or going to lose it, I don't care what you do with it. As long as I can still get it back when I need it. And I'm quite happy to get the interest. So what they're doing now is the users of the gold, in this example, users of the energy, the banks, the investment banks, who do they pay the interest to, the taxes to? The United States Treasury.
Okay.
Because the United States Treasury is the bankruptcy trustee. Remember, everything on that monopoly board is bankrupt. And so the investment banks that are using the energy, just like they used to use the gold, have to pay interest, taxes. Interest and tax are the same thing, really.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they pay taxes. The investment banks are paying taxes to the bankruptcy trustee, which is the United States Treasury, as per House Joint Resolution 192. And the investment bank is got to pay taxes because they're using the energy. They can't not pay because they would be breaking the law if they didn't pay for the use of the energy. So they have to pay for the use of it. They pay the Treasury, United States Treasury, for using the energy. That tax that they're paying, if you imagine the example I've just given you, if I came to you with my $1 million of gold and you're supposed to pay me the income, sorry, you're supposed to pay me the taxes or the interest, which is the same thing, but you gave the interest to someone else. Right. I wouldn't be very happy, would I?
No.
I'd be you saying, Andy, where's my interest on my gold that you're holding? You say, I gave it to someone else. You wouldn't be very happy, would you?
No.
Sorry,
you'd want it back.
You might be happy, but I wouldn't be very happy because I'd say, well, you're supposed to pay me. Well, the problem is that all of these, everybody who's issuing these negotiable instruments don't realize that they are owed the taxes. No. Nobody's told them.
No.
The banks can get away with paying the taxes to the United States Treasury. Nobody's going to question it because hardly anybody knows about it, apart from those people that are watching our interviews. Because we're telling them.
So when it comes to this tax that's owed, part of what you describe in the Clifford Protocol is an OID, the original issue discount. Why aren't the banks telling us about this? Why is this some kind of secret that nobody knows, nobody talks about?
Well, it's not actually a secret. It's just that if you go online and then search, go into AI, go online, go on to some internet search and put in there, please explain to me what original issue discount is, and give me some examples of how I could use it, right? And it's going to come back with if you are trading in securities or you own securities like debt instruments, and you are the holder of them, and you're trading them in some way, buying, selling them, and you make a gain, you've got some tax, it's called withholding tax. You're supposed to pay it to the United States Treasury. Withholding taxes, right?
Okay.
Now you might overpay because you may have miscalculated your withholding taxes, and then you can claim them back with an original issue discount calculation. So if you were to search the internet, that's what it's going to tell you they are, because you can only claim back the taxes as a debtor. So the birth certificate construct, the person, the citizen, can only claim back taxes under the 1099 OID system that it has already paid as a debtor.
Yeah.
It can't claim back signature credit energy or the taxes on the signature credit because it's a debtor.
Yeah.
And it's only ever going to tell you 1099 OID from the viewpoint of the debtor, which is the birth certificate construct. And that's why people go to jail, because they try and they do. Many of them send in a 1099 OID from the debtor entity, expect the United States Treasury to send them a recoupment of signature credit or the taxes on the signature credit, but it doesn't belong to it. The debtor has no entitlement to it. So therefore it's fraud. It becomes a fraud. It's a RICO fraud because if you defraud the United States government, that's RICO fraud. It's racketeering.
Yeah. Very serious.
It's Al Capone.
So there's people out there using this incorrectly, clearly, unlawfully. But in the Clifford Protocol, you are very, very specific about how this process is a lawful process. So let's move this a little bit further beyond the debtor and back to source, back to the creditor. You talk about a 98 series grantor trust in the protocol as well. Why do we need to move this conversation or move this process into kind of the international side of the system to get it resolved then? How does that work?
So the living man woman is the agent for the birth certificate construct, right? That construct is registered to the worldwide state, the cabal. So they own it because it's registered to them. Okay. So that's the debtor entity. The citizen, the person is the debtor entity. So we've established that. Now, if that tries to file 1099 OID, it's going to get itself into great difficulty. And it could even put the living man woman in jail as the agent for the birth certificate construct, the person, the citizen.
Okay.
Yeah. Agency. We're back to agency, right?
Yeah.
Now, if
blessing and a curse.
Blessing and a curse. If you then set up the grantor trust, the birth certificate construct creates a grantor trust as its grantor. the trust, which is a 98 series, is not registered to the worldwide state or the cabal. It's independent. So it can operate as a creditor entity.
Okay.
Which is why the IRS don't make it easy to create the 98 series grantor trust with an EIN number, because it is not registered to the global state in the same way as the birth certificate construct is. It has a unique standing, and it's an independent jurisdiction.
Okay.
So you created a new player piece, put it on the Monopoly board. 98 series grantor trust. Another huge aspect of how to play Monopoly at the advanced level. You now start playing Monopoly through the grantor trusts. So the first grantor trust that you create is the tax filing grantor trust. That trust is seen on the Monopoly Board of Commerce as a creditor entity. It can be a nominee for the actual creditor. The actual creditor is the living man woman, who is the beneficiary of the 1099 OID that is seen in the system as a creditor entity. It can operate lawfully as a nominee for the true creditor. The true creditor is the man woman, the beneficiary of the grantor trust. So now we've got the living man woman is the agent for the birth certificate construct, the person, the citizen. The person citizen is on the Monopoly board, creates another piece on the Monopoly board, which is the grantor trust. That grantor trust has got a unique standing on the Monopoly board. As a creditor entity, can operate as a nominee for the true beneficiary, the true creditor that is the beneficiary of the grantor trust. So now the living man, which is the living man woman. The living man woman is the agent for the birth certificate construct and the beneficiary of the grantor trust that is a nominee creditor entity. So what we've done in what I've just described is we've put a new piece on the Monopoly board that is seen by the board as a creditor entity that can operate as a nominee, just like the banks do. The banks are operating as nominees for the creditors, the living men, women, right? So by creating a grantor trust that is seen in the system as a nominee creditor for the real creditor, which is the beneficiary, the living man woman, who cannot step on the Monopoly board, can only operate on the Monopoly board through a nominee grantor trust that is separate from the birth certificate construct, because the birth certificate construct is a debtor entity that is registered to the world state, the cabal. So what you've done is you separated all of those problems that exist, the curse, the trap, the agency trap. You've separated that. You've eliminated that problem by creating the grantor trust. I've said this to you before, Annie. When I started looking into this and I realized how to use this, I could instantly see the application of it. It was like finding the answer to a question that hardly anybody's ever found the answer to. It was a eureka moment. Because I knew what the problem was. The debtor entity couldn't file 1099 OID without RICO fraud problems. So how could you create a solution to that? How could you create a pathway to avoid RICO fraud, make it perfectly lawful? Why don't we do what the banks already do? The banks are operating as nominees for the true creditors. Let's create a nominee structure, which is a grantor trust. It doesn't need to operate with a banking license. No. But it can operate as a nominee. And if you then look at IRS publication 1212, the grantor trust is now operating as a creditor nominee for the actual creditor, because the beneficiary is the actual creditor, can file 1099 OID 100% lawfully, and receive the taxes back by redirecting them from the IRS's tax modules, where the investment banks are paying taxes to the United States Treasury under the 945 tax module, redirect that tax to the true creditor, the true holder in due course, the true creditor entity that represents the creator of the energy in the first place, which is the living man, woman, who never ever steps on the monopoly board because it can't step on it, but can operate on the board with this new player piece, which is the grantor trust.
Okay, that's a real, like you said, a eureka moment. That's this doorway, isn't it? Because we can't step on the monopoly board, can we? It's not real. It's fictional, and the pieces that play on it are fictional pieces. So how do we create that doorway as the living creditor to be able to step into that world, make those filings, and reclaim the taxes on the credit that we issued in the first place? And it's the 98 series international grantor trust that you've mentioned that is that gateway, that doorway. So that's huge. And I'm assuming this is why other people, and maybe when you, like you said, when people go and they do a Google search on 1099 OIDs and how to recoup my taxes or whatever they're searching for, this is why Google's going to come back with, you're going to get yourself, you'll go to jail, you'll get yourself in trouble. There's nothing online that will tell you that this is a lawful process.
Well, apart from my research papers.
Apart from your research papers, you can go to ecclesialaw.org and you can see the exact breakdown. There's a 13-page document that you've just written explaining all of this in great detail. So somebody said to me recently who'd looked at it, they said, Ian, you should put this forward for a Nobel Prize. Yeah. Well, can you imagine how many lives that could change? If people really knew how this worked.
Yeah.
So in terms of the general public, people that are watching this, when it comes to taking action, it's one thing watching these interviews that we do. It's one thing maybe reading some of the documentation that you put out there. I would suggest that many people don't read those. I like reading them, but many people probably don't. But you've got to really start thinking about taking action on this and removing that debtor mindset. This is something that I was certainly swamped with up to my neck in. And when I suddenly realized that there was a huge mental shift for me. It wasn't just about, now I know what I can do with my finances. It was more, I think for me, the initial change was the mental shift of, hang on a second, I'm the creditor. I am not a debtor. I'm the person that's issuing all of this and you lot are using it. And that elevates you as an individual, as a living man. And you start thinking differently. You start acting differently. Some of the stresses go away. Some of the negativity goes away. We're showing you here, guys, that this system is built on an incomplete rule book, number one, and that you've been funding your own life with a magic pen, with a signature, everything that you issue. And just so people understand that, when we talk about signature, Ian, what does that encompass? Because it's more than just a physical signature, isn't it? You talk about intention. So what does that include?
It's the intentions and energy, right? It's like a witch. It's like Harry Potter waving his wand about. You can make an intention through another. So you can set up a trust, and the trust can issue signature on your behalf. So it doesn't have to be you physically getting a pen out and signing something. The signature is an intention. It's really all it is. It's an energy. It's the energy of intention, and it's a transference of that energy, labor. And you see the guys who created this monopoly board system, they're next level. They knew exactly what they were doing. And they actually said, I think it was Mandel House said only 1 in a million will ever figure this out.
Yeah.
And he was absolutely right.
Yeah. And haven't they made it easy for people to create that intention and create that signature? You know, back in the day, I suppose if you wanted anything, you would have had to go down to the bank and make an appointment with the bank manager and sign the documentation. Now you can do it all online. You can get one of these things and just tap it on a little device. That's classed as a signature. That's an intention when you pay for things using contactless. This is what we're talking about, guys, when we talk about signature credit.
Yeah.
Every intention, every movement of that money that goes out there, however you've done it, whether you physically signed a piece of paper, filled something out online, or tapped your phone, all the same thing. So as far as final thoughts here, Ian, I mean, I guess for most people, this is huge who've never heard this before. What would you suggest they do with this information? Because for me, taking this on and then shelving it would be a crying shame. It really would. You talk about this being a blessing and a curse. The blessing side of this is life-changing, or could be life-changing for people. So what should be their next steps, do you feel? Or what should be, if you were brand new to this, Ian, what would be on your mind right now?
Well, this came to me gradually over the course of many years, and it didn't all drop in my lap in one go. No. I started questioning how the banks operated 20 years ago, and it didn't make any sense to me. When I started really thinking about it, when I had a joint venture with Bank of Scotland that became Halifax Bank of Scotland, that then became Lloyds Bank, it didn't make any sense to me how they were financing themselves. It just didn't add up to me. And it's like, I don't understand how you guys are doing this. I just know it doesn't make sense to me. And because my intuition is pretty good on this stuff, I figure these things out. I don't always know the answer, but I do know that something doesn't make sense. And it didn't make sense to me, what the banks were up to. It didn't make any sense at all. When they defrauded my customers and blamed me for it, then I started looking into it in great detail. That was the catalyst for me trying to figure out what the hell was going on with this. And then gradually I figured it out. But there's one thing figuring out how banks create credit, or how they take the credit in and what they do with it. And there's another thing, which is how do you recoup the signature credit energy, the taxes. That's a whole other thing, that is, and that's taken another period of time to figure that out. So, and that's, I think, I've worked on a lot of solutions in my 42 years. I think the Clifford protocol is my best. It's my best work.
Yeah,
I really do think that, and I hope that people in generations to come, if this system carries on, which I think it will, because it's very good. It's a very good system for control.
it is.
I think that my legacy will be that maybe some people will say, Ian's that guy who figured that out, and that's what I see about it. If you're thinking about what could it do to help you, well, if you don't comprehend what it's about, then you need to comprehend it. The old saying, I'm sure you've heard this saying, that money doesn't grow on trees, right?
Yeah.
So that's an interesting saying, isn't it? Or money doesn't come out of thin air. People say these things.
Yeah.
They say to their kids. I remember my sister told me a story years ago. She said, because I've a couple of nephews, and she said they were out one day in shops, and my sister was using her debit card to buy things in the shops. And one of my nephews said when they got back to the car, "Oh, Mum, can I have one of those cards so I can go and get some stuff?" And of course, my sister said, "Well, you can't really have one of these cards because you need to put some money into the account so that you can get a card and then you can use the card. So when you get older and you go and earn some money, then you can get one of these cards and you can go and buy some stuff, whatever the stuff is that you want to buy, right?"
Yeah.
And my nephew said, "Oh, well, how long do I have to wait for?" Well, you have to wait till you're 18, get a job, blah, blah, blah. Well, my sister, bless her, what actually my nephew was saying, can I just get one of these cards because I want to buy some stuff? That was genius.
Yeah, when you think about
No,
it.
it was naive. It was actually genius because it's like that card is the gateway in and out of the system, really, in many ways, right?
Yeah.
So maybe he already knew that all you needed to do was to sign and recoup your signature credit, and then you could have one of those cards and you could buy anything you wanted, pretty much.
Yeah.
My nephew, young lad, wasn't asking a stupid question, was he?
No. Out of the mouths of babes, as they say.
Yeah.
That's often where a lot of the wealth of wisdom comes from, without them even knowing it. So, I mean, I would say for anybody that's watching this, you know, we to Ian's point about if you want this to make sense, then it has to make sense to you personally, which means knowledge. We run weekly webinars with the content that we provide here. We have our private members association that shows you the exact protocols, including the Clifford protocol, that bridges these gaps that we see on the monopoly board. I would also say that if you are a member here and you're watching this, if this is making sense to you, I would say no doubt it might make sense to your circle of people as well, potentially. So share the content, help us reveal this, help us help others. That would be my goal with this. And then it really is, I think it's time for people to stop being the surety of the banking system and start being the holder in due course of their own energy, is what I would say. If you know that you had a magic pen and no matter what you touched with that, you could get that back, why would you not? Number one, continue to use it. But number two, actually claim back what is rightfully yours. That doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. I think you gave the example the other week of filling your car up, didn't you, Ian, with petrol? You know, why would you, if you got two options, number one, you could go and fill up, you got a couple of pumps at the petrol station, one where you had to pay for it, and another one, let's say, where you didn't have to pay for it. So you got a petrol pump there that's God knows what it is nowadays. It's nearly over here in the UK. It's creeping up to nearly £2 a litre again. It's about £1.80 something again with everything that's going off at the moment. And then you got another pump where it's £0 per litre. Which one are you going to fill up at every time you want to fill the car? Are you going to use the free one, or are you going to use the one where you got to continue to pay? That is exactly what we're talking about here. You've got the ability to recoup and recycle that same credit energy. That could reduce your cost of living literally down to zero. And I don't understand why nobody's talking about it and why nobody's doing anything about it. Because within our community, there's thousands of people that know about it, but not many people that are actually taking action on that, which is sad to see. So if you are in our community, I would encourage you, get yourself clued up a little bit more on how this works, because the knowledge that you gain will increase the fact that this actually does make sense, that it is lawful. Go to ecclesialaw.org, look at Ian's reports there. There is a 13-page document. It's not an overwhelming one, but it's a very, very interesting document to read on how this actually works. Goes through the banking structure, goes through the taxes that are paid on what's called the 945. Every single step of this process is verified and lawful. And then when you understand how to use it, it's then time to take action. So that would be my final words, Ian. I think it's all about people taking action. We can help them, but we can't do it for them, can we?
Yeah, I would say that a lot of people don't like reading documents. I've you know, in my career, I've read thousands of documents, so I'm used to reading stuff. But a lot of people don't like reading things, and I get that. I understand that. So what you can do nowadays, if you can get an app on your phone. I use, I think it's called Speechify, right? So if I've got a really long document to read, and I might read it, or I might just copy and paste it and put it in Speechify. And then when I'm driving the car, having a walk, going up the shop, I put my earphones in, I can listen to it. And that's often how I do it. I can read it and then I can listen to it, and it sinks in for me. Listening, because I like a bit of audio. I'd actually prefer listening to something than I would reading it. But I can read and listen, and if I read the document and then listen to it, it goes in, and that's my brain. You might be visual. You might want pictures. I don't know. But if you read it and listen to it, it'll probably sink in much faster than just reading it. So.
No, that's a great tip. I know I like audiobooks. My wife and I will often listen to an audiobook in the car. I much prefer that to sitting and reading. Yeah, Speechify. Yeah. So if you've got your phone, maybe look at that on the app center for your phone.
Get it on your phone. All you've got to do is copy and paste the document. It takes a little bit. You've got to sort of scroll your finger down and copy paste it in there, and then you can listen to it.
Yeah.
In fact, I might even get all of the documents on ecclesia law made into audiobooks. That might be something good to do.
Yeah. Well, basically, guys, there's no excuse. We're looking at ways to make it easier for you to access the information, to digest the information. But once you've done that, the next steps are down to you. We have a team of consultants here that you can speak to about your own personal journey and how to use the Clifford Protocol, how to recoup your abandoned credit, how to recoup that energy back to source, reduce your cost of living, reduce your stress, discharge debt, everything that is weighing people down in today's world. Like you said, that's the curse, that's the agency, that's the liability to the piece on the monopoly board that is the birth certificate construct. But in contrast to that, using the Clifford Protocol and other protocols that we have here at the Republic of Old Souls, there is also a blessing behind the fact that you have that agency at the moment. And using those protocols, you can play this game of Monopoly at an advanced level. And that's what this is all about. So I appreciate you joining us all for today. It's been a shorter one than usual, but we're trying to keep these more concise now so that you've got less content to try and digest in one go. But no doubt we will be back very soon with another topic, another protocol, another problem and solution. And I'm looking forward to that. Any final thoughts before we let everybody go, Ian?
Last thing I'm going to say is there's no definition of income or gain because there can't be an income or a gain because there's no money or substance or debt-based. You can recoup the signature energy credit, which is taxes. So that's the irony of it, right? They want you to pay taxes with something that you can't actually pay with because there's no money of substance, but you can recoup signature credit, which is tax. That's the irony of the game, right? They want you to pay, you can't pay. There's no income or gain because there's no definition of it because there's no money of substance, but you can recoup the signature credit, which is tax, back to you.
Perfect. Well, thank you for that, Ian. And guys, thanks for watching. We will see you on the next episode. Bye for now.